viewers, and welcome to the third instalment of the Faith versus Faith series, in which I take a look at different religions and compare them as much as possible to the beliefs, practices, teachings, etc. of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, in this third episode, I'm thrilled to be dealing with a religion that has been a cause of considerable controversy, especially in the last few decades. And a religion that, frankly, not many of us know a great deal about. So we're now talking about Islam. And joining me to talk about Islam from Jordan is Mohammed Alkhadra, who is a Jordanian civil engineer and humanist activist who founded the Jordanian Atheists group in 2013. Mohammed, it's an absolute delight to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to join us. So, if you could just kind of tell us, we were speaking briefly off camera about the predicament there in Jordan. Presumably it's okay for you to talk to us. You're not in any kind of immediate threat for speaking out against your former religion.
Yeah, the government itself is not a threat. Like, it might persecute people on the basis of calming the opposition, because the government is a mix between Islamic and secular. But the threat comes from the society, and the society doesn't go for watching secular conferences or speeches, but they might be out. So the threat is there, but still you won't face it from the government itself unless they want to make the opposition happy, which they actually did a few times. But the threat is actually based on the society itself. Because I read in an article that there was like 4,000 Jordanians in ISIS. They left Jordan to join the Islamic Caliphate. So the threat is mainly from the society, but showing your face and showing your name shows that you can defy this, and you can say, like, you won't follow the rules of those who wants to make rules on you, even if you leave.
Well, I think it's very brave what you're doing, not just with this video, but also with just your work in general, because even though, like you say, that there's no immediate threat from the government, just knowing that you live in a society where, and we're going to come to this later, where people think it's okay to be violent towards atheists and that kind of thing, it takes a great deal of bravery.
Thank you.
So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background as a Muslim and give us an idea of what it's like growing up in the Muslim faith.
Well, it's a whole bunch of rules, and you live in this box of rules which neglect your own human nature. Like, you get brainwashed so much that when you grow up, you have all these thoughts inside you. But still, we are at a moment in history that the whole world is connected. So when you get contact with Western culture, there's a huge debate inside you that, okay, these guys are saying things that are right, and these guys are saying things that are right, and you're saying that they are saying things that are right based on your own brainwashing. So you have an internal conflict. But this is one of the major difficulties, that even you will have them after leaving the faith. You still have thoughts, you still have the same old Muslim guy inside you trying to pull you back in and tell you, no, this is wrong. Like, how can you accept this? But deep inside, what you're doing is true. There are phases in being a Muslim. Like, one day you can be open-minded and you don't care, you don't pray, and the next few days you might like watch a video on YouTube or just hear a preacher, and then it pops in and says, okay, I won't care for this life, I want the life that is after death. So you start being more and more let's say radical about it. So you start praying more and learning more, which could lead of you to be a jihadist or could lead to you being a preacher. And there's nothing wrong with being a preacher, but other than having you poisoning everybody and creating more jihadists for the war. But at least it's better than bombing yourself.
Yeah.
I had that phase in my life.
Really?
Yeah, I was believing that okay, I won't care for this life. I would like to make sure that I safely like put myself in heaven. So I said, okay, I have two choices. I can either be a jihadist or be a preacher. So in both ways, I believed in the caliphate and believed in a country that is ruled by God and ruled by Sharia. And I heard that I read that this is the case of you guys as well. That they for the Jehovah's Witnesses, that they believe in a kingdom of God. That Jesus is a king, and there's no other countries in the world. This is the main Islamic view. Like you can't have Jordan, you can't have Syria, you can't have the United States. There's only one country that should rule the world, and it's the Islamic Caliphate.
So talk us through. I mean, thank you. That's a lot to go on, by the way. It's not every day that you get to speak to someone who's been in that mindset where they're willing to, like you say, blow themselves up if needs be. I just want to kind of learn a little bit more about the eschatology side of Islam, because you touched on Jehovah's Witnesses. With Jehovah's Witnesses, when we go to our kingdom halls, we're learning that this is Satan's world, that its days are numbered, that imminently there will be Armageddon, when the whole world will be destroyed, and the only people who will populate the planet after Armageddon are essentially Jehovah's Witnesses. So talk us through what you learn along those lines when a Muslim goes to a mosque.
I didn't get you. How was...
So what does a Muslim learn about what's going to happen in the future?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have, it's nearly the same idea that secular countries or secular governments are also led by Satan or by Jews.
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And that they trying so hard to destroy the true way of Islam. So they believe that when Armageddon comes, there will be this angel that pops out of nowhere, and he just blows in something, and the whole planet dies. And then there's another blow that makes the whole planet wake up again, and then go to be judged, to go to heaven or to hell. This is the view of Armageddon. But
right, okay.
As you said, the countries themselves are considered to be not satanic, but to be considered like the enemy of the faith. So if you have a moderate Islamic country, they won't buy it, they won't take it. They want the radical one. They want complete Sharia or no Sharia. There's nothing in between.
Yeah. So. And I'm aware that there are different branches of Islam as well, but you're saying that essentially, whereas Jehovah's Witnesses believe in repopulating the planet, you're saying that essentially there will be no planet. If you could just
there will be no planet. They will all go to the, I won't say heaven because they're going to heaven and hell. They will go to the sky.
Yeah.
And then God will decide that this guy goes to hell and this guy goes to heaven.
Yeah, it's basically like a celestial sourcing office. Yeah. So, wow, that's incredible. So talk us through what an average week looks like when you're growing up as a Muslim. What's the routine, basically?
Well, the weekdays are normal. You have to... If you say that you're committed as a Muslim, which most people are not, but they can be at one point or another in their life, You wake up at like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. You do your prayer, and then you have to pray again at like 12, and then you pray again at like 4, and then you pray again at 8, and the fifth time is at night. And there's a lot of praying, and there's a lot of side prayers and side verses that it's so deep into your day that even everyday language is Islamic. And for atheists in Islamic countries, we always have these Islamic words and we say them to each other because we have lived all our lives saying that. And you can't go through your day like if somebody's saying like if somebody has been in an accident, you could express it in English and just say that I wish you're okay or etc. But in the Arab world, even your language, even Arabic, is derived from the Quran. So it's all those phrases, and so religion is just it's shoved in your face every day and every moment. And in Friday, there's this huge prayer where preachers come and they preach, and then everybody's praying at the mosque. And you're not considered man enough if you just stay home and you don't go to the mosque. You're ashamed to your family and you're ashamed to people. If you walk in the street while the prayer is on Friday, everybody will be looking at you like, okay, they actually don't care about the streets, that people block it with cars on Friday prayer because you have no right to drive on the Friday prayer. You should be at the mosque.
Wow.
Why aren't you at the mosque? Even if you're a Christian, you'll have to stuck there.
So society grinds to a standstill, basically, on a Friday.
Yeah.
It's interesting you touched on language, because we have the same thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm sure they have it in a lot of religions where language is used as a tool to keep people compliant, and there are entire kind of portions of vocabulary that are unique to the religion. So if I'm talking to, for example, another XJW, and we're kind of reminiscing about our time within the religion, we're going to be throwing up all of these words and phrases that will just be gobbledygook to someone who hasn't grown up as a witness. And I'm intrigued that that's the same with Islam as well. Yeah. Wow. So we're going to come to the how apostates are dealt with shortly. I just want to kind of try and round up any other areas of abuse, or what that you feel are areas of abuse within Islam. I mean, obviously, I'm aware of female genital mutilation. I'm aware that that women are treated pretty badly. I'd just like to know if you could kind of sum up, what the main areas of abuse are within Islam. How would you do that?
Well, first of all, I believe in genital mutilation to be on both ways. It's not just female genital mutilation. I believe it is for the man and the woman.
Right. So in Islam, it's also for men.
Yeah, it is for men. Like they do the same things that the Jews and most Christians would do, because I believe that it is derived from taking away your sexual desires or sexual pleasure. So it's not just for women, but it is not that common in Islamic countries. Like they have some in Saudi Arabia, they have some in Egypt, but it's not for female genital mutilation. It's not that widespread.
Right.
Like people believe that all Islamic countries do this. They don't.
Okay.
Because the Prophet said that to do circumcision for a man is an obliged from God, but to do it for a woman, it's a good thing, but you don't really have to.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, this isn't the hadith. Like,
right.
You should do it for the man, you can do it for a woman. So most people just, nowadays, they don't do it for the women, but they do it for the men. For other types of abuses, let's just say that the man he can beat up his wife after like doing 3 steps. He can first of all not talk to her, advise her, then not talk to her, and or not sleeping with her. And the third phase is beat her. Now, they try to dance around the words, and they try to reinterpret it so that it looks more human, or it looks like more 2017. But it doesn't, because when you're talking about phases of punishment, you can't say like, okay, I won't talk to her, I will advise her not talk to her, and then like calmly put my hand on her shoulder. No, it says beat her. So for women, yeah, it's a bad mess. And for the men and women as well, I'd say there's the attack on your critical faculties. Like there's a certain point where you can't think. You're forbidden to think, and you just get the doctrine or the dogma as it is, and you believe in it. There are some questions you can't ask. You can't ask who created God or where is God. No, these are forbidden because they're satanic thoughts in your head. You have to be. There's also that a married man will be killed for adultery, and he will be whipped for like 80 times for having sex outside of marriage, and the women as well. There's whips for. I'm talking about Sharia. I'm not talking about the countries right now. It's not in Jordan, but it is in Saudi Arabia and it is in Iran. You get whipped for drinking alcohol or selling alcohol. There's all those barbaric ways, like cutting the hand of the thief is considered a more morally correct than imprisoning a thief or educating a thief. For more abuses, there's the apostasy. We'll go through that later. The idea that you already know whatever that is important, for me, is considered the most abusive one. Like this is all that is important, that you have been brought in the right faith, that there's Muhammad said this and that, and the Quran said this and that. This is the truth, and this is what is all important. So you just focus on there, and you'll live happily ever after. If you don't live happily in this life, you'll have happy life in the afterlife. So this brings down the society because nobody cares about science. Nobody cares about creating anything. If you just focus on praying every day, everything will be fine. This destroys culture, and this destroys everything. And there's also the ban of music and the ban of dancing. And I think you know that there's a Saudi Arabian teenager who got imprisoned for dancing in the street last week.
Yeah, yeah.
So all this banning and forbidding and banning and forbidding and banning and forbidding creates these people who are just, they don't have a life. And once you give them the opportunity to have that alcohol and women and etc. in heaven for dying for Islam, everybody will be running right for it. So you just oppress people and give them hope. If you want that hope, you go fight for God. That's their way.
Wow. Yeah, well, what you're describing will be familiar to many people who are watching this who have grown up as Jehovah's Witnesses, because obviously, you know, the end game with Islam can be far more violent and far more tragic. But with Jehovah's Witnesses, you have this same thing where you're only allowed to think along certain lines, and it's forbidden to ask certain questions, and you know, you can't look at apostate sources and that kind of thing. So again, what you're saying will be familiar, I think, to a lot of people, you know, watching this. Let's now talk about apostasy, which again is an area in which there is commonality between Jehovah's Witnesses and Islam, with the difference that in Islam, you know, you can die. And I was watching your speech at the secular conference in the UK, which I'm actually going to show a clip of later. But you mentioned the death of an activist. Talk to us a little bit about that side of Islam.
Okay. So Islam is inherently political. So when people say that, okay, there's political Islam and there's Islam, no, the faith itself is political. It wasn't political at the first years, but once they started the wars with the unbelievers, it got political, and the Quran started being more and more aggressive and got more and more into a country. So once you leave Islam, it is considered as like you're a traitor of that empire. So let's say somebody is leaving the United States and he wants to be a spy for the Soviet Union at the Cold War. They would kill him, or they would like assassinate that spy, or they would imprison him. So this is the case. Like if you leave Islam, you're not just leaving the faith. You're a traitor of the country, or you're a traitor of the empire, or the caliphate, or the future caliphate that will come. So you're not just leaving us, you're an enemy as well. And you must be getting paid from somebody. I can't believe how many times I got asked that who's the Jew who's paying me, or who's the Illuminati that he's paying me. And let alone something that you're considered to be completely immoral. I also stress that I've been asked so many times why I wouldn't sleep with my own mother. Like what tells you that you can't sleep with your mom? Because you don't have a faith, you don't believe in God, you don't believe in Islam. So what's stopping you? See, inside you're a Muslim. Deep inside you know that it is wrong. So deep inside you are a Muslim. Because if you weren't, you will be a complete animal. This is how they see us. And it's because you're seen as a traitor, the punishment is death. You have to die, and you get 3 days to repent. And you don't get those 3 days if you curse the Prophet Muhammad. You don't have 3 days, you're just being killed. In 13 countries in the Islamic world, it is in their law to kill the apostates, and they carry it on sometimes. In the case of Mohammed Alkhadra, the one I talked about in the secular conference in London, he was an atheist. He was from a Christian background. He wasn't even a Muslim. So he was now an atheist, and he published a cartoon.
Was he in your group? No. Okay. Yeah.
My group is a bit a community right now.
Okay.
Underground community for young people.
Right.
So this was a known reporter and an old man. So he published a cartoon about the god of ISIS. He was just criticizing ISIS thoughts, but deep inside, every Muslim knows that ISIS is representing Islam.
Right.
So he was talking about just the thoughts of ISIS warriors, how they think that they're going to heaven, and how they will meet God and the things they will get. So everybody got offended. Although if you ask them, they will say that no, the ISIS doesn't represent me. ISIS is created by Jews. So the whole country was up against him, and the government got him for hurting the religious feelings.
So he was arrested.
The same country that is fighting ISIS considered this as an offense of religious feelings if you criticize ISIS. So it's a mix. You didn't get it, and I didn't get it. So they got him locked up. And while he was leaving the courthouse and just going down the steps, an imam from the capital, like a preacher in a mosque, he walked in and he shot him to death at the last year.
So this was 2016 that this happened.
Yeah, this is 2016. Now they locked the imam, and the government just switched faces. I told you previously, the government would please the people and hunt atheists down, but once it's going to be international, they go secular again. So they backed down, they locked the imam, and they executed him for killing Mohammed Alkhadra. But you can't deny that the government's hand and the community's hand was also involved in this. If the people did not preach his death, and the government didn't like openly show him to the world, this wouldn't have happened. So everybody has a hand in this.
The very
And
fact that he
everybody,
was arrested, really,
yeah,
yeah, makes the government complicit in what happened, really.
yes.
Wow. So, I mean, I've spoken to at least one other Muslim. You're actually the second Muslim I've spoken to on my channel. I've also spoken to Imtiaz Shams in the UK, and he obviously is, like you, dealing with helping people out of helping endangered ex-Muslims who perhaps need to leave the country or whatever. And we were talking about shunning, because obviously with Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, we're grateful that we don't have our lives actually physically threatened, but there is still this phenomena of, you know, families literally being ordered to not speak to Jehovah's Witnesses who leave. So, for example, my father's not speaking to me at the moment. There are people who fall into quite serious depression because their families are estranging them. Is there a psychological element that you're aware of in Islam, or is it purely this case of if you're an apostate, then you're on the run for your life, basically?
Yeah. First of all, I would just comment on the way that they do this for Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
It's an emotional blackmail.
Yeah.
Like, I know you don't believe in this, but if you want me, if you want my love, or if you want my care, you just fake it, because they know that once you go out, you don't believe in this, but they're asking you to fake this your entire life just to get love. So I don't believe that the people who are doing this deserve to be actually respected and loved. But they can be our father or mother or etc., or our entire family, but I feel sad for them because they are victims too.
Yeah.
They are victims of the same brainwashing. So although they are victims as well, but still they are performing emotional blackmail on the people who are leaving your faith. In our case, the emotional blackmail will be a physical blackmail. It won't be that much of an emotional one. It's a main threat for women as well, because if a woman leaves Islam, as I said, it's considered to be completely immoral. So they will think, okay, the next day she's going out with a man, she's going out with plenty of men. So they would probably consider her leaving Islam as a strike to the family's honor, and that's a big deal in the Middle East. If a woman strikes the honor of the family, it's okay to kill her, and you get, from the government, you get a lower sentence because you killed her for your honor. So you get like 6 months in jail or 1 year in jail for killing your sister or your daughter. For helping endangered ex-Muslims, as you said in your previous meeting, I had actually the case of a lesbian girl, and she was, their family just found out a little bit about her Islamic beliefs and found a lot about her actions with other women. So we kind of took her from the house and took her to the official, and she had her face was like shoved in glass, and she had all those cuts in her face and a large bruise right here. So when I got to the officials, we said, okay, this woman has been through this and that and that. And the policeman said, on your ID, it shows that you're wearing a hijab, and you're not wearing a hijab. Could you please give me a hijab and let this woman cover herself? This was the first comment.
That's all he was concerned about.
Yeah. And then they called the family, and they told the family to come. And we said, okay, the family's coming, so the government must be like, want to do something to them. And once they came, they gave them the girl, because you should have your girl came alone or came with a guy. So no, you take your girl and you go to your house, and everything will be okay if you just promise us not to beat her a lot more. And she went off. So to help endangered ex-Muslims, I think it's for them to leave the country. I had cases where people actually were able to leave after being threatened to be killed. But as I said, not much of an emotional blackmail. Once it gets physical, you don't care about the emotional part, although it is huge. And you get to a point where, as you said, they shun you. Well, consider this. Consider that Jehovah's Witnesses are, let's say, like 30 millions, I think, or
8 million.
something. 8, yeah. 8 million. But you're still in the States.
Mm.
Right. So if you go to college, how many Jehovah's Witnesses will not be talking to you? Let's say 10 or 100. Okay. I've been through college, and in my last year, I had nobody who would speak to me because my whole branch was Muslim and my whole branch knew I was an atheist. So some people believed I should die, and the others were like completely ignoring me. So it's just like your case, but it's much bigger, adding that everybody is a Muslim here, like 99% or 98% of the country, a Sunni Muslim as well, let alone the physical harm that you might get into.
Yeah. So as of now, are you being shunned by your family that you grew up with?
No, actually, I'm not.
Okay.
My mother is a bit old, so she doesn't know about me being an atheist. My father passed away.
Right.
So I won't tell her, because if you spend 60 or 70 years believing in Islam and then you find the boy that you grew up and you taught him all these things that you think are right, if you see him walking away from them, it will break her heart. So I didn't do that.
Yeah, the kind thing is to have a pretense, basically. So long as you can. Yeah.
To like act in a certain way.
Precisely. Now let's get on to another thing that really stood out to me, because it was actually your appearance at the secular conference that really kind of put you on my radar, and you gave a very, very stirring speech about the way society in general reacts to extremism, and I'm going to play that clip now.
Death is what we're fearing. Here, you guys are losing. Yesterday at night, I had a small paper that says, "Awesome without Allah." And we left here, and we went to have dinner. An ex-Muslim girl with me at the conference grabbed me and took away that sign. And I asked her why. She said, because there are Muslims next to us, we might get in trouble. This is in London. This is in the 21st century. This is in the free world. Where are your priorities? While we die there, you're all thinking about Islamophobia. You're all thinking about not going... People are getting put to death because of this fascist, theocratic religion. And all you think about is how can we give them more space? And how can we give them more rights? Let me tell you something. Islam is very powerful. It's super powerful. It has the oil, the money, the countries. But here, it's a small minority that needs special rights, Sharia courts, that I have to live every day as a target and be okay with it and live with it. And if I say a word, if I say that Islam is bad, I'm an Islamophobe and I should shut up. This is it. And yet we hear debating about, is it okay to curse at Islam or not? Is it okay to draw a cartoon or not? Or should we be more tolerant? Being out is being able to speak and to be who you are. So if we think about which is better, the cons or the pros, I will definitely pick the pros. Why? Because you can never live with yourself. Anybody, you can't live with yourself if you just choose to be quiet. And this is what you are doing. You're being quiet while we're not. And look what we are having to give and what you are giving.
So, first of all, bravo for saying all that, because I think it's obvious from the standing ovation that you received when you'd finished your speech, that people really appreciated you telling it like it is. There is a reticence in society to deal with dangerous ideologies that are harmful and corrosive. Where do you see it going? What do you think needs to be done so that harmful extremist ideology and brainwashing is dealt with properly?
Yeah. Well, first of all, where I see it going is this is the main idea of why we shouldn't be too kind or too nice, because I see a major threat coming, and you can see it in the past weeks as well. There's this. The West is trying to please the Islamic minorities that they have, and they're giving them things that are not their rights in a secular country. Like you can we all have the civil courts. You get your own Sharia courts. We can have public schools and private schools, but you get religious schools. So once and now the terms are coming, that now the Islamophobia, and now you can criticize this and that. So once it gets to be the right, you can't take that back. If you pass the law where you can't criticize religion, it will be their right to be offended of the way that you say your thing, or the way that you criticize their thoughts. So I see in the future there will be a certain point where the government says, no, we won't give them this. Actually, we're going to take this back. One of the rights that they give to Islamic minorities. Actually, we're going to take this back. Once they take this back, you won't have one or two terrorists. You'll have the entire minority feeling oppressed because it's been so many years that they felt that this is their right, and now you're taking my right? No, I'm going to fight you for this. So they will take more, and these guys will be oppressed more or feeling oppressed more. So it will create an internal conflict within the country itself. And so what I say to people is that you think that a terrorist attack every few months in some country, and this is the most dangerous thing. No, it's not. I see in the future terrorist attacks every single day and in every single country, because once it sparks, it will never stop. And you can see this in the previous weeks. You had attacks in Finland, in Russia, and in Barcelona, and it's growing. The numbers increasing because they are starting to feel oppressed, because they want a right that they can have. They want a right not to be criticized, and people are not giving them that. So if the country that have free speech actually embrace free speech and exercise it, they will say, no, we won't give you this, because once they give it, there will be another claim and there will be another demand from this theoretical ideology. It's just like Hitler. Like, you give me this little piece of Czechoslovakia, or let me get Austria with me, and everything will be okay. And they did. And then the UK Prime Minister was saying, okay, everything's good now, we won't have war. And then, no. Fascism and Islam is a fascist ideology. Fascism cannot be dealt with that way. You can't appease with fascism. You have to either attack it, if it's a country, or you have to attack the ideology itself. And you attack the ideology itself with your free speech and your freedom to offend. So I just ask the Western countries, or the countries that have free speech, to not do the mistakes that were done with Nazism.
Don't give up the free speech, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you do, you'll be doing the same thing that the European countries did with Hitler. You're giving them those little pieces, but war is coming. You can't deny this. War is coming, so you'll have to face the ideology while it's still small in the country that you're living.
What do you think? I'm interested to know your thoughts on this. Obviously, with Jehovah's Witnesses, one of my main arguments when I'm trying to kind of reason with people about the religion is that bottom line, it's not true. And if it's not true, and part of that religion involves breaking up families or people dying from refusing blood transfusions, well, then the whole thing is harmful. And I get what you're saying, that whereas many people would talk about Islamic extremism, I get what you're saying, that ultimately this whole idea that the Quran is sacred, that the Hadith are sacred, and that everything that's in the Quran and Hadith should be respected, even when it's calling for violence. You're saying, well, there's the problem right there. What do you say to people who, and frankly, I'm kind of on board with this, who say, well, you can't just expect Islam to go away. You can't just expect all of these millions of Muslims around the world to say, oh, you have a point. Maybe my religion isn't true. I'm just going to stop doing it. What do you say to those who say the only realistic option is to find some way of reforming Islam?
Well, if we believe that, as Maryam Namazi once said, that the social media is doing to Islam what the free press did to Christianity. You have millions and millions of Christians who changed their views over the years and over the centuries because of this Enlightenment era that Europe had. So if you can have that same enlightenment in Islamic countries, we will have a more peaceful version, probably. But the fear comes from this. If you have a phase in the Quran that is literally translated into killing someone, let's say, even if it's 10,000 years after now, maybe one guy will read this and believe in this and will go suicide bombing again. So the book itself is harmful. And it says actually in the Quran that this book is simple, it's for everybody, and it's clear, it's a clear message, and it's the last message from God. And it cannot be rewritten or changed in any other way. So once you have that thought, you'll have a majority of Muslims who don't believe in reform, and they don't believe in change. And every single reform you do is considers you to be an apostate yourself. So this is the main difference between Christianity and Islam, is that Islam looks at itself as a rigid, unchangeable, unreformable religion. That once you try to reform it, you're considered an enemy. So reforming is pretty hard, and some people are trying to do that, but it's like if you're just covering the poison, and you're just covering the gun that will eventually kill you. So no, you have to face it face on, and you have to say, you can't say, okay, Islam is good, but the extremists are bad. No, the extremists are extremists because of this. So you'll have to discuss it, and you'll have to say the things that you believe in, because you might enlighten a few people. Will you enlighten the whole Islamic countries? No, you won't. But it's a small step. I don't see it coming in 10 or 100 years, maybe. But it will eventually come. And Islam will be reformed eventually. But we have to take this moment as an advantage for us, because once it's not reformed, it is obviously clear how fault it is. Once it's reformed, apologetic people will get those little weak atheists back in, because now we have this new version, this new peaceful version of the faith. So we need to face it head on from now.
Yeah. I do get what you're saying. I mean, I don't know. I haven't researched Islam much. It's kind of on my to-do list. I am aware of there being, I think there's a verse in the Quran You may know it better than I do, where it says something like, you may not like violence. Well, you should learn to like violence. You should learn to like it, or words to that effect. But
Somehow, yeah.
yeah, but when you when you go out of your apartment or wherever it is that you live, you are surrounded by thousands, millions of people who take this seriously and who find a way of believing in that and respecting that, even though they're not going around killing people. Surely we can't expect all of these, again, millions of people in Jordan or in other Islamic countries to watch YouTube videos, to read Richard Dawkins and say, actually, I've had enough of this. How do you see the transition working, in other words, from the situation now to a situation where we no longer have to worry about people being killed due to Islamic fundamentalism?
Yeah, actually, it is happening with the youth.
Right, okay.
Guys and girls
That's positive.
who are 15 to 25. Youths, there's a whole movement of being secular or being an atheist, and people are getting interested in reading and learning more and more about faith itself. And once you be out about it, out of being an atheist, like I do, you give people the curiosity of going and searching what's this guy is all about. Let's go and read about atheism. So it might bring in more people to reason. So
like a snowball effect.
Yeah. So the first step is being out helps a lot of more people than you think. The second step is the West, when it's clear and it's not giving any grounds for the extremists. That's the second step. The third one is to be organized as atheists or as humanists to all work together in the same projects. Would enlighten more people and will give much more advertising to the same ideas that we have. So we might not agree on certain goals, but we can agree that they're not the same threat. Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, no, they're different, and there's one in particular that is causing all this violence and harm and poisonous ideas. So once we all work together, we can see in the future a transition. So I'm optimistic and pessimistic about it. I told you that I believe that war is coming for the West, but still I believe that the Middle East is going a bit more and more secular. That's why I said there's a tsunami coming for the West, and there's a tsunami coming from us in the Middle East. Because our numbers are increasing while the numbers of extremists are increasing in the West.
Right. Well, let's hope that the side of reason triumphs over the side of fanaticism before the world is destroyed. That's all we can hope, isn't it?
Let's hope so.
Well, listen, Mohammed, it's been an absolute thrill and delight talking to you. Again, I have immense respect for what you're doing and the work that you're doing. I think that your message is important and needs to be heard. And if I can play a small role in getting your message out there, I'm delighted to do that.
Thank you.
I hope at some point I get to shake your hand in person. Please, pass on my love and regards to everyone else in your group if you can. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for promoting this and for letting the word comes out that and please do just a word to your audience. I have heard this in London so many times. People who look like me, they don't have to be terrorists, because I have seen a lot of ex-Muslims being threatened from Muslims and being shamed that by Western or like white folks because they look like us, so you must be a terrorist. Not every brown guy has a bomb.
Yeah.
So I just want to get that to your audience, and thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate that message. On the one hand, Islamophobia is kind of like a made-up expression that's designed to silence criticism of Islam. But on the other hand, we must remember that it is possible to be a Muslimophobe and to have hatred and irrational fear of Muslims or people, of a certain ethnicity, and to assume the very worst of them, and we simply can't do that. So, yeah. Well, again, thanks so much for joining us, and viewers, I hope you found this interview interesting. I will try to get more fascinating interviews like this lined up for you, but for the time being, please don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and as always, thank you for watching.